You're watching Forsaken Joe. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Enjoy the story. Let's begin. I was sitting at the bar, nursing a whiskey, when I saw her. Emily, my wife, laughing louder than usual, a glass of wine clutched in her hand. She was dressed in that little black dress that always seemed to turn heads, and tonight it was no different. The guys were looking at her, giving her attention like she was the center of their universe, and it should have made me feel proud. But tonight, it didn't. It didn't feel like admiration. It felt like a spectacle. I noticed Tyler first. He'd been eyeing her from the moment he walked in. Tyler was one of those guys who had no problem making his presence known. Confidence oozed from him, the kind of guy who had his pick of women without even trying. His charm was smooth, almost calculated. I could tell he wasn't just making small talk. He was moving in. And sure enough, after a couple of minutes, he made his move. "Emily," he said, leaning in closer than he needed to. "You're way too gorgeous to be sitting here alone with this spineless boy." My stomach twisted. I had learned to ignore the insults in the past. It had always been the same when we went out. Guys like Tyler, thinking they could take their shot. But tonight, something about it stung more than usual. She didn't even look at me. Without hesitation, she put her hand in his. "Come on, let's go. I could use some better company," she said, her voice dripping with sweet poison. There was no hesitation from her side, no glance back to see if I was okay. She was gone, swept up in his world, her laughter ringing out in a way that wasn't for me. And there I was, stuck in the corner of the bar, surrounded by strangers, but feeling completely alone. I couldn't bring myself to move, to chase after her. I just stayed still, watching them walk away. I finished my drink, the ice cubes clinking in the glass, like the sound of my own heartbreak shattering. The glass slipped from my hand and crashed to the floor with a loud, unforgiving thud. The sound echoed through the bar, but in that moment, it felt like the only thing that mattered. I wasn't angry at her. I wasn't even surprised. I was numb. She didn't come back that night. The hours slipped by in silence, and as I sat there, in the dim glow of the bar lights, the plan started to form. It wasn't an emotional outburst, or a frantic chase after her. No, I was done being the fool. This wasn't the first time, but it would be the last. It wasn't revenge for the sake of retribution. It wasn't a knee-jerk reaction. It was a calculated decision. Something had snapped inside of me, and now I was done being the backup plan, done being the guy who cleaned up after everyone else's mess. It was time to take control, and I would start by showing her exactly how much she had underestimated me. The next morning, I woke up to a barrage of missed calls and frantic messages from Emily. The phone buzzed incessantly beside me as I lay still in the silence of the bedroom. I didn't need to check them immediately to know what they said. "Jason, please understand. Don't do anything crazy. I'm sorry. I didn't mean it like that. I need you. Please call me back." I could hear her desperation even through the screen. But I wasn't about to give in. The thought of chasing after her, begging for some explanation, felt like the same old routine I'd lived through too many times. I rolled over, rubbing my face with my hands, trying to push the anger down. It was too early to make any decisions, but something deep inside told me it was time to stop being her backup. As I picked up my phone, I scrolled through her messages. More apologies, more promises. She would say anything to make things right, but I wasn't fooled anymore. She had made her choice last night, and I wasn't the one she wanted. I let the calls pile up. The tension in my chest only grew as I sat there, letting the weight of it all sink in. But this was what I needed. I needed to be angry. I needed to stop feeling like I was the one who always had to fix things. Around noon, I decided to drive to Emily's mother's house. Carol, Emily's mom, had always been the one who tried to keep the peace, but I knew she was just as complicit in Emily's behavior as anyone else. When I walked through the door, Carol greeted me with that same fake smile she always wore when things were about to get uncomfortable. "Jason, hi, I didn't expect you." Her voice trailed off as she saw my face. "Where is she?" I asked coldly. "Emily, is she here?" "Oh no, she's not. She's probably just..." Carol stammered, but I cut her off. "Don't lie to me. I know you knew about it." I dropped a file on the counter with a sharp thud. The folder was thick with evidence. Screenshots of Emily's texts, receipts from her nights out, and messages between her and Tyler. The affair was undeniable. Carol's eyes flickered to the file, her breath catching in her throat. "Jason," she began, but I wasn't interested in her excuses. You knew, you all knew, I said, turning to Emily's father, Greg, who had been sitting quietly in the corner. He avoided my gaze, pretending not to hear me. You let her treat me like this. You let her destroy everything. You all played your part, and now you're going to have to face it. I turned to Madison, Emily's younger sister, who had been sitting at the kitchen table looking uncomfortable. She didn't meet my eyes. She had always been too afraid to speak up, too eager to stay on Emily's good side. You too, I said flatly. You watched it all happen. You didn't say a damn thing. I could see the walls around Carol start to crack. The perfect little family facade she had carefully built was starting to crumble. She blinked back tears, but I didn't feel any sympathy. Is this really necessary? She asked weakly. Yes, I said, because you all need to understand that there are consequences for enabling her. I'm done being part of this toxic dynamic. I turned and grabbed my coat. This ends now, I said, my voice low and controlled. I've been playing the fool for far too long. With that, I left their house, already planning my next move. Emily's world would crumble just like mine had, and she wouldn't even see it coming. The days after the confrontation with Emily's family felt like a quiet before a storm. I spent the next few days focusing on one thing: revenge. I wasn't angry anymore, at least not in the way I used to be. I was detached, calculating. Emily's desperate messages kept coming in, each one more frantic than the last. She tried to spin her actions as mistakes, misunderstandings. She begged me to forgive her, to give her a chance to explain. But I wasn't fooled. I let her calls go unanswered, not because I couldn't stand the sound of her voice, but because I didn't care anymore. She had made her choice. It wasn't about me. It was about her convenience, and now that she had what she wanted, she could leave me in the dust without a second thought. As the messages piled up, so did my resolve. This time, there would be no reconciliation. No more chasing after her, hoping that she would somehow see the light. I would be the one to dictate the terms. She would see what life without me was really like. I knew exactly how to hit her where it would hurt the most. Her career. She had built a reputation at her job for years. She was the darling of her industry, the woman who could do no wrong, always polished and professional. But that's the thing about perfection. It's fragile. One crack, one small thing out of place, and it all starts to unravel. I didn't need to do much. I had the evidence, the screenshots, the receipts, the texts. I took the time to carefully draft an email, attaching everything with a simple note. This is what your perfect little life looks like when the lies are exposed. I sent it to her entire office. It wasn't out of malice. It wasn't even about revenge anymore. It was about showing her, showing everyone, that she wasn't untouchable, that the life she had built on lies wasn't as solid as she thought. It was just a house of cards. As the email hit her inbox, I couldn't help but feel a small, cold satisfaction. The kind of satisfaction that came not from the chaos I had caused, but from knowing that she was finally beginning to face the consequences of her actions. But there was no pleasure in it, no satisfaction like I expected. As the days passed, I noticed something. Her apology didn't feel like a plea anymore. It felt like desperation. And I knew in that moment, I had already won. Emily's world was crumbling, but for me, it was just the beginning. 2 days. It had been 2 long days since Emily walked out with Tyler, and in that time, she had tried everything to reach me. Missed calls, voicemails, texts, each one more desperate than the last. But I didn't respond. There was nothing left to say. She had made her choice. When she finally came home, it was almost as if nothing had happened. She walked through the door, still wearing the red dress, the same dress she wore when she left with Tyler, the same one she thought would make me forget. "Jason," she said, her voice dripping with sweetness, but I could see through it. I could see the manipulative glint in her eyes. "I'm so sorry. I don't know what came over me. It was a mistake. Please, can we talk?" I didn't move. I stayed where I was, sitting on the couch, my gaze fixed on the television that I wasn't really watching. I wasn't interested in hearing her excuses, not anymore. "Can we talk?" she repeated, softer this time, stepping closer to me. I didn't respond right away. Instead, I stood up slowly, walking over to the kitchen. I could feel her eyes on me, her anxious energy filling the room. She wanted to see if I'd crumble, if I'd run after her again. But I was done with that. When I turned back, I met her eyes, and for the first time in a long while, I felt nothing. No anger, no pain, just calm indifference. I know what you did, Emily, I said, my voice low and controlled. I know about Tyler. I know about everything. Her face tightened, but she quickly covered it up with that same practiced smile. Jason, you're making this more than it is. It wasn't like that. It was just a moment, a mistake. I'm so sorry. No, I said firmly. It wasn't just a mistake. You did this. You chose him over me. And you've been choosing him for a while now, haven't you? I could see the flash of panic in her eyes, the way her shoulders slumped, but she quickly recovered. I didn't mean for it to get this far. I was confused and I cut her off, my tone colder now. I'm already making arrangements for our separation. I've already talked to a lawyer. I'm starting the process. Her face faltered for just a second before she regained composure. What are you talking about? She asked, her voice rising. We can fix this. Please, don't do something crazy. We've been through so much. No, I said, my words like ice. You've been through so much. You've been manipulating me for years, and I've let you. But not anymore. I'm done. She took a step back, her eyes wide with shock, but the manipulative side of her kicked in. You can't do this to me, Jason. Don't you see? I need you. You're everything to me. Her words were hollow now. I saw right through her act. She wasn't sorry. She wasn't even afraid. She was just desperate. Don't, I said, stepping closer, my voice calm but firm. You've lost everything, Emily, and you've lost it because of your own actions. I'm not the fool you thought I was. She reached out to grab my arm, but I stepped back. Please, she whispered, her voice faltering for the first time. Please don't leave me. I stood still, feeling nothing but the finality of it all. You made your bed, I said, turning away from her. Now lie in it. She stood there in the doorway, watching me as I walked to the other room. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. For the first time in years, I felt in control. And Emily, the woman who had torn me apart, was nothing more than a memory now. The brunch was set. I arranged it, choosing a quiet, neutral spot at a restaurant in town, somewhere far enough from Emily's world but still familiar. I didn't want to give her family any more excuses to sidestep the uncomfortable truth. They needed to face the reality of their daughter's actions and their role in enabling her. Carol, Emily's mother, arrived first. Her usual facade of warmth was noticeably absent today. She knew. She had to know something was coming. She sat down across from me, her hands wringing nervously in her lap. She looked older, tired, maybe even regretful. But I wasn't here for pity. I was here for accountability. Jason, I don't know what to say, she started, her voice quiet. I didn't know it had gotten this far. I didn't want to believe it. You didn't want to believe it, I echoed, my voice cold. Or you didn't want to face it? Because if you really didn't want to believe it, you could have stopped it, Carol. Her eyes flickered to the file I had brought with me. It wasn't just a few receipts or some casual text messages. It was everything. Every lie, every betrayal, everything I had been blind to. I dropped the file onto the table with a sharp thud. It landed with a finality that filled the space between us. She hesitated before opening it, her eyes scanning the evidence like she was reading a horror story about her own daughter. She began, her voice breaking. You can't be serious, Jason. I'm as serious as it gets, Carol, I said, leaning in slightly. You've been complicit in this. All of you have. You knew about her affair, and you did nothing. You enabled this toxic behavior. She shifted uncomfortably in her seat, avoiding my gaze. It wasn't a surprise. Carol had always been more of a bystander in her own family, letting Emily's actions slide because it was easier than confronting the truth. Emily's father, Greg, arrived next, his expression one of tired indifference. He didn't even look at me when he sat down, staring straight ahead. Madison followed, her usual calm demeanor looking strained. She didn't say anything either, just waited for the inevitable confrontation. Greg, I began, keeping my tone steady. You sat by while this happened. You didn't intervene when it was clear Emily was crossing lines, and you didn't step in when she made a fool of me. You allowed this to happen. Greg finally met my eyes, but his gaze was empty. What do you want me to say, Jason? He asked, his voice almost apologetic. Emily's always been headstrong. She doesn't listen to anyone. That's not good enough, I snapped. You're her father. You should have known better. You should have cared enough to stop her, but you didn't. Madison, who had been quiet until now, spoke up, her voice trembling slightly. Jason, it's not like that. Emily, she's our family. We didn't want to believe it. We didn't want to see what was really happening. And you didn't, did you? I said. You just turned a blind eye. You didn't want to face what was really going on, so you all let me take the fall. I leaned back, looking around the table, letting the silence settle in. It was finally sinking in. They were realizing the full scope of what they had done. They had stood by, offering no help, no support. It was a family of enablers, and I had been the fool for trying to fix everything on my own. I'm done with this, I said, my voice hard. I'm done with all of you. I've tried to be part of this dysfunctional mess for too long, but not anymore. You can't act like this doesn't matter. You all played your part in destroying everything. The room was heavy with the weight of my words. I wasn't asking for anything from them anymore. I wasn't expecting an apology. I was simply closing the door on the family I had tried to hold together. Carol opened her mouth to speak, but I stopped her with a glance. I'm done, I repeated. And you can't fix it. Not now, not ever. I stood up, feeling the finality of the moment settle in my bones. It was done. Emily, her family, this whole life, everything was over. I turned and walked out, the door swinging shut behind me with a quiet click. The address was easy to find. Tyler's auto performance shop sat on the edge of town, tucked between a few low-rise warehouses. It was the kind of place that screamed tough guy and fast cars from every corner, a perfect reflection of the man who had waltzed into my life and ruined it. I parked outside, taking a moment to steel myself. Part of me felt no satisfaction in confronting him. It wasn't about that. I'd already taken everything from Emily. This was just the icing on the cake, a reminder that I wasn't the same Jason anymore. The bell above the door chimed as I walked in, the smell of oil and metal filling the air. Tyler was standing by the counter, talking with a mechanic about a project. He didn't even notice me at first. Hey, I said, my voice calm, controlled. Tyler looked up, his eyes narrowing. For a split second, he didn't recognize me. Then his face twisted into a cocky grin. What do you want, man? He asked, his voice dripping with arrogance. You lost or something? I'm not lost, I said, walking towards him. But you're about to be. He raised an eyebrow. Is that a threat? I didn't flinch. Number? It's a warning. Tyler laughed, clearly not taking me seriously. You've got some nerve. Who the hell do you think you are showing up here? I took a step closer, the space between us closing. I'm the guy who's going to ruin your life, I said, my voice dropping lower. Tyler's smile faded, his confidence wavering for a brief moment. He glanced around, as if unsure whether to escalate or play it cool. Look, man, he said, his tone less cocky now. I don't know what your deal is, but you need to leave. I'm not going anywhere, I said, pulling a folder from my bag. I handed it to him, letting him look through the documents. You don't recognize me, but I know all about you, your criminal record, your parole officer. I know exactly how to ruin your chances of staying out of prison. His hands shook slightly as he flipped through the pages. I could see the realization dawning on him, but he tried to maintain his bravado. You think I'm scared of you? I shook my head, leaning in. No, but you should be scared of the consequences. I've got all the evidence I need. If you want to keep your freedom, you'll stay the hell away from my life. His face twisted into something resembling fear, and for the first time, the tough guy act faltered. You wouldn't, he said, voice shaky. I already have, I replied, and I'll make sure your parole officer gets a copy. So if you ever step near Emily again, you can kiss your freedom goodbye. Tyler clenched his jaw, his fists balling at his sides. He tried to stand tall, but there was no hiding the nervous energy that radiated off him. You're making a big mistake, man. You really don't know who you're messing with. I stood my ground, unwavering. No, Tyler. You're the one who made the mistake. I turned to leave, but before I reached the door, I glanced back one last time. Enjoy the next few days. They'll be the last calm ones you'll have for a long time. I walked out, feeling no satisfaction, no triumph, but there was something, a strange sense of finality, a closing of a chapter. Tyler had been confident before, but now his world was about to crumble, just like mine had. And as I drove away, I knew that he would never forget this moment. I thought she'd finally given up, but Emily's persistence was never far behind. The voicemail came first, a broken, desperate plea. Jason, please! I'm so sorry. I've lost everything. Tyler, my job, my family, my reputation. I never meant to hurt you like this. I don't know what I was thinking. Please don't do this. I'll do anything to make it right. Just give me a chance, please. I listened to it twice, the first time with an empty, hollow feeling in my chest. I wasn't angry anymore, just indifferent. The second time I played it, I felt nothing. There was no fire left inside me, no urge to reach out or fix things. The manipulations, the empty words, none of it mattered. She had done this to herself. The next day she showed up at the apartment, standing on the other side of the door when I opened it. Her eyes were red, her makeup smeared, and she wore the same defeated expression I had seen too many times. It wasn't real. It was just another act, another attempt to make me feel guilty for her mistakes. "I'm sorry, Jason," she said, her voice trembling. "Please, just let me explain. Let me fix this." I didn't invite her in. I stood there, silently, letting the weight of the situation hang between us. "Explain what, Emily?" "How you betrayed me with him," I asked, my voice flat. "How you destroyed everything we had for a quick thrill. You really think I want to hear you apologize? After everything?" She flinched, but didn't back down. "I never meant to hurt you. It was a mistake, Jason. Please." No, I interrupted, cutting her off before she could spin her story. "It wasn't a mistake. It was a choice. And now you're facing the consequences of those choices." I didn't feel anger, not like I thought I would. It was calmness that washed over me now, a detachment that made everything clearer. Emily had always relied on my need to fix things, to make everything okay, but not anymore. "I've already started the separation process," I continued, my words cold and final. "I've spoken with a lawyer. This isn't going to be something you can talk your way out of." She seemed to shrink, her hands fidgeting with the hem of her dress. "Jason, please, don't do this." I looked at her with nothing but indifference. "You did this, Emily. You chose this path. And now, you'll walk it alone." She stepped back, her face pale, as if the ground was slipping out from under her. She turned quickly, her footsteps echoing as she walked away. I didn't feel any satisfaction from her walking out. In fact, I felt nothing. It was just the end of something I should have let go of a long time ago. I closed the door softly behind me, feeling a sense of peace settle over me. This was it. This was the last chapter of my life with her, and for the first time in ages, I was free. As I sat back down on the couch, I realized something. I wasn't sad. I wasn't angry. I was done. I had no more ties to this woman, and that was the moment I knew I had truly moved on. It had been weeks since I saw Emily, since I sent her walking out the door, with nothing but the weight of her choices trailing behind her. I had no idea how much time had passed until I started looking at the changes in my own life. I wasn't the same man who had walked into that bar months ago. The man who had let himself be humiliated, who had believed, despite the lies and betrayals, that he could somehow fix everything. No, I wasn't that man anymore. He had died the moment I watched Emily leave with Tyler, and in his place was someone new, someone stronger, calmer, more certain. I'd spent a long time hiding behind work, behind distractions, but it had only been putting off the inevitable. I had to face the pain. I had to face the wreckage of my past. I started therapy. I didn't realize how much I needed it until I finally walked into that office. Talking to someone who wasn't involved, who wasn't emotionally connected to the mess I had been in, gave me a sense of clarity. Slowly, I allowed myself to grieve, really grieve, not just the loss of my marriage, but the loss of my dignity, my self-respect. It was a painful process, but it was one that forced me to grow. I reconnected with old friends, people who had faded into the background, as I poured myself into saving a marriage that was never worth saving. It felt good to laugh again, to remember who I was before Emily. And bit by bit, I found pieces of myself I had buried under years of compromise, neglect, and regret. One evening, while I was out for a drink with a friend, I ran into Laura. She was as beautiful as I remembered, but it wasn't the kind of spark I thought it would be. The rush of attraction was absent, and instead, there was just a sense of comfort, a recognition that I had changed. "You look good," she said, smiling gently as we exchanged greetings. "Thanks, I'm finally getting there," I replied, the weight of the words hitting me harder than I expected. She studied me for a moment, as if noticing something she hadn't before. "You've changed," she said quietly. I nodded, taking a slow sip of my drink. I think I'm finally learning how to live for myself. It wasn't about revenge anymore. It never really had been. As satisfying as it felt to expose Emily's lies, to watch her world fall apart, that wasn't what had healed me. What healed me was taking control. What healed me was letting go. Laura and I talked for a while, but it was a conversation without any immediate spark. Still, something inside me told me that the future held more than the pain of my past. I wasn't afraid of love anymore, not afraid of what it meant or how it could change me. I was finally, truly free. When I left the bar that night, I realized something. I was no longer haunted by the memory of the man I used to be. I had become someone stronger, someone who wasn't defined by Emily's actions or the mistakes I made in trying to hold on. I had rebuilt myself from the ground up. For the first time, I felt peace. And with that peace, I knew I was ready for whatever came next. No longer bound by the past, I was free to write my own future. It was almost poetic, really, sitting at the same bar where it all started. But this time, I wasn't here to relive the past. I wasn't here to drown in memories of humiliation or regret. I wasn't here to fix anything. I sat alone at the bar, nursing a glass of whiskey, the amber liquid swirling in the glass. The bar was quieter than it had been on that night. The night Emily left with Tyler. The night I shattered inside, but stayed silent, watching them walk away. That night, I had no idea how long it would take, how many steps it would require, but I knew that moment was the beginning of the end, and here I was months later, not even thinking about her, not even thinking about him. The world hadn't stopped turning, and neither had I. I glanced at my reflection in the mirror behind the bar. For the first time, I saw a different man, a survivor, someone who had been through hell and walked out the other side with his dignity intact. My eyes, once clouded with uncertainty, were clear now. I had healed. The bartender, a friendly guy I'd spoken to before, nodded at me. "You doing all right?" he asked. I smiled, the first real smile I had given in a long time. "Yeah, I'm good," I said. "Actually, I'm better than I've been in years." He raised an eyebrow, as if surprised by my response. "Well, glad to hear it." The truth was, I didn't need to explain myself. For the first time, I wasn't trying to impress anyone or justify my actions. I had no more baggage, no more guilt. When I closed my eyes, I could almost feel the weight of the last few months slipping away. I had done what I needed to do, taken control, let go of the past, and reclaim my life. It wasn't revenge that had brought me peace. It wasn't the destruction of Emily's life that filled the void inside me. What had healed me was the decision to stop letting my past define who I was. I wasn't Jason, the man who had been humiliated. I was Jason, the man who had learned to rise above it all. The door to the past was closing for good. Emily and everything she represented had no hold on me anymore. I finished my drink and sat back, feeling the sense of calm wash over me. The future was mine, and for the first time in years, I felt ready to embrace it. No longer the man Emily knew, no longer the man who had played the fool. I was someone new, stronger, wiser, and in control of my own life. And with that realization, I stood up, took one last look at the bar, and walked out, ready for whatever came next. My healing was complete,